Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, Bryce Simon is with me, and we're going to talk about the Lakers being eliminated from the playoffs and where they go from here, the Suns being eliminated from the playoffs and where that thing goes from here. Finally, we're going to talk about the Pelicans, them being eliminated from the playoffs, and where their entire offseason is going to go, because it could be an offseason of change in New Orleans. Until then, let's hit the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What's this going to be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Bryce, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Sam? I mean, I feel like I haven't seen you recently. We haven't podcasted together. We haven't spoken. It's not like we've done now 3 podcasts in the last 48 hours or anything.
Yeah, no, just normal stuff. It's all good. I love it. The funny thing is that, like, last night I debated going live like immediately after the Lakers game, but I ended up having dinner plans with a good friend of the program, Olgan Olik, out here.
Okay.
So I was like, I don't know if I have time to do this. Knowing me, I might end up going too long, being late to dinner. So we're just going to do this today. I hit you like after that, and I was like, okay, today we're just doing Lakers, Suns, Pelicans. We're diving into this. I might, depending on how long we go, because you have to get to children's soccer, we might talk a little bit about the early entry. At the very least, I'll give some takes on a bit of frustrations I have with the early entry thing right now, because
like that's missing players, that it's missing players. Players are not on the list that are entered into the draft. This is the freaking NBA, Sam. And I took a name off my board because I'm like, what Hunter Salas didn't declare. I'm searching his name on Twitter, like all of this. And teams are voting for the combine. What, tomorrow? What are we doing?
By the end of tomorrow, yeah.
What are we doing?
I don't know what we're doing, man. It's pretty rough.
Okay. I'd be pissed. Sorry. I know this is the most workup I've ever been on Game Theory, but that would make me so mad.
Yeah, like Caleb Love has been working out in Chicago, I think, for like 2 weeks now, prepping for the NBA draft. Like, client of Priority, who is probably the best agency, in my opinion, right now. They get their guys paid more consistently. If you look at like a track record and long-term analysis of, you know, getting guys paid based on their production. They do a good job through the pre-draft process, everything like that. You're telling me that like Mark Bartelstein forgot to file the paperwork for Caleb Love? Like,
right.
Yeah, no, I struggle with that. We might talk a little bit about it. Okay. First though, let's talk about the Lakers getting eliminated from the playoffs last night briefly, but more spring this forward to where this goes from here. So this will be the Lakers offseason preview. I've got one of our handy pages as usual. We've got some videos. We got some clips we're going to run through, everything like that. Not really run through. They'll just play. I've kind of locked up everything that we need to know here. So let's start with the last series that just occurred with Denver. Denver eliminated the Lakers in 4-1. So in 5 games. The Lakers had led by 9 in the second half of the final 4 games. They led by at least 9 in every game of the series. My take on the Lakers, and I posted this last night, is that they are way closer to competing and contending than what I think anyone really likes to say, because it's the Lakers and people don't like the Lakers and everything like that. Do you think the Lakers are a couple of moves away from contending like I do?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, at the end of the day, we talked about this going back to the regular season when we talked about the Lakers, when we even talked about the Warriors in terms of what their record was. And it wasn't bad. They didn't have bad seasons. And so I think they're close enough that you don't just say, "Oh my gosh." Like there's a team we're going to talk about today. It's like, what is the path here? Like what do they do? But with this team, it's you bring back LeBron. I know we'll talk about it. AD, obviously, big Austin Reeves fan here. So obviously I'm saying Austin Reeves, but then how do you build it out? Like that's what I want to know. And that's what I'm sure we're going to discuss, Sam, is how do we build it out? Because you can't run it. We can't say this was pretty good, and if we run it back, it'll be okay and good enough next year. It's close enough to go, there is a path, but we have to find that path and make sure we hit on it.
I agree. I was pretty impressed with what I saw from the Lakers in the playoffs. I thought that they played effective basketball against the team that I think is the favorite to win the title. They contended with this team the whole way. They battled, they scratched, they clawed. I thought that they really kind of overcame coaching, and we'll certainly talk about Darvin Ham and some of the decisions he made throughout the season, let alone in this series. I think that with LeBron and Anthony Davis, with Austin Reeves locked in, certainly long term, I feel like they're kind of okay. Like I know that people want to do the sky is falling with the Lakers thing. I don't see it. I really think that they can contend as soon as next year. They just need to do some things on the margins more than anything. And that's assuming that LeBron returns. And, maybe we'll talk about that in a second, but I'm okay with this. Like if I'm them, I'm trying to largely run back what we saw this year and make moves on the margins more than anything, I guess is where I'm at. Not like the big Trae Young swing, not the big, star swing. I think they've got the stars. I think that they just need like really good, effective role players that give them two-way options.
Yes.
And that would be okay.
No, that's where I'm at as well. Again, you have LeBron, you have AD. Again, I'm a huge Austin Reeves fan, so I'm going to lump him in there as well. At the end of the day, you have to make a decision on, well, I guess he's going to make part of this decision, but D'Angelo Russell, and he did score 18 points a game. He shot over 42% from three on really high volume. How do you replace that? What do you do with Rui? Like, I would like to upgrade that other fifth starting spot. What do you do off the bench? Taurean Prince, are you going to count on that again? What is your backup big situation behind AD? They have a draft pick, so that I think they have moves they need to make, in my opinion. They have to get these things right with whatever options and avenues and mechanisms they have to get there. I wouldn't want to just say, hey, let's bring all these guys back and same health is going to happen and D'Lo is going to shoot this good from three again and Gabe Vincent isn't going to be hurt all year and everything will be fine. But I agree with you in that I don't think they have to go star hunting to fix it. They have to win on the margins. And then it comes down to, do you think the Lakers and their front office can win on the margins this offseason? You're muted, Sam.
Before we get to winning on the margins, let's talk about LeBron and his decision coming up, as well as, maybe Russell and things like that. So LeBron spoke on his decision to not speak last night about whether or not he'll be back. Let's hear from him.
Thought at all that, this could have been your last game with the Lakers?
I'm not going to answer that. Appreciate it.
Says a lot, right? That says something to me. The pause there that is so condensed. I often don't take away a lot from players in moments like this. And I don't really take away from a lot from LeBron there. I understand why people do it. I think there are just so many reasons why that answer can come in that moment. You just came off the court after a disappointing loss in a playoff series, right? Maybe one that you didn't expect to win, but still disappointing nonetheless when you're LeBron James. You have a lot going on. You're a free agent this offseason, potentially, if you want to be. You have a son entering the NBA in Bronny James, where his whole situation seems so complicated and convoluted, right? You've got a team and a coaching staff that is ripe for change in a lot of different ways. Honestly, you could be deciding, hey, I need to like keep some leverage over the organization here because I am turning 40 next year and I want to contend for a title and I don't want to restart. So I need to make sure and keep the leverage as high as humanly possible for any circumstance that arises. I just think there are a lot of different ways to interpret that. I believe that Woj went on TV today and said like the hope and like basically the hope for the Lakers and like everything like that is that he will sign a 2 to 3 year extension with the Lakers. That makes sense to me. I think certainly he's an all NBA player still. I think he can be a real dude on a playoff team. We saw that throughout the playoffs. Although I will say that the great moments for LeBron, where I'm at on LeBron right now, is the great moments for him are still among the league's best, point blank. There are times where nobody can touch that dude. However, there are stretches through games where his, I would guess, semi-diminished physical skills compared to where they had been previously throughout his career start to work against him, and he goes through decision-making lulls throughout games that can hinder the Lakers for stretches. But when he is on, he's still among the best of the best.
I would agree.
And is still an all-NBA player, to be clear.
The highs are as high as you would want still. The lows are low, like the consistency, right? Like there's just bigger gap in those. I think about just the notes I've made over the last couple of weeks in Lakers games and how many layups he's just missed. Like that's just one single microcosm of what we're talking about here. And I know we want to keep this on LeBron, but this is why I say the roster does need to change. He can't, Sam, LeBron can't have to play 35 minutes a game, 71 games next year for the Lakers just to get them into the play-in. He's going to be worn down at the end of the day. That's what it's going to be at his age. We talked about this a little bit with Steph Curry. Even if it is a quote-unquote 82-game player that gets buckets for them, they have to find a way to lower his usage in the regular season so that consistency can be higher in the postseason, and we don't see him getting worn down in the fourth quarter. I've referenced Tim Bontemps a couple times in a row now. He talked about, the idea the Lakers should have lost the play-in game so then they could get the 8 seed and all of that stuff. And one of his biggest things is this was the Lakers' best chance of beating the Nuggets, because the longer it goes into the playoffs, the more wore down LeBron is going to get and AD is going to get and all of that. And so if that's something we have to consider with LeBron, they have to find a way for his usage and wear and tear during the regular season to take a step back.
I agree with you kind of across the board on that. I think that that's definitely right. They just need to limit the wear and tear on him. And I think that this is where the conversation about what they need to do this offseason kind of comes up, right? They need to find a way to get more creation in the building from guards. And I feel like, to me, you have to find guys who can actually like touch the paint more than anything. That, to me, would result in D'Angelo Russell departing from the Lakers. You have Austin Reeves on a 3-year, $42 million deal. I think Austin Reeves is like just a way better player than D'Angelo Russell. Like, I think he's just way more consistent. I think he's better defensively. I think he's a better passer. I just think he is a more effective third guy to have out there with LeBron and Anthony Davis than Russell is. I get it that Russell had like an incredible shooting stretch at the end of the year, but like I just can't count on him in big games, and I can't count on him against the Nuggets, and we have enough proof of that kind of. I thought Reeves did a really good job on Jamal Murray throughout the course of the series. Yeah, I just think that I trust him more than I trust D'Angelo Russell at the end of the day.
Even if you want to say Russell has more offensively, which I think there's a conversation there because obviously it looks very different in how they do things stylistically, all of that. The Lakers trusted one of those two guys to guard Jamal Murray for 5 games. And I realize Murray had some crazy makes and game winners and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, they never thought, oh, we're going to put D'Lo on Jamal Murray. That was task of Austin Reeves. And like you said, I thought he did a pretty decent job. So yeah, I agree with that.
I just think that you probably need somebody who can actually like really touch the paint next to Reeves and next to LeBron at this stage. And for everything that Russell is, he's not really that guy.
Yep.
Here's what D'Angelo Russell said after their game regarding his potential to, be back, not be back.
When I signed my contract last year, I knew what position I was going to put myself in. So to be in that position now with a little leverage, I'll try to take advantage of it.
I guess he has leverage, like on some level, right? But not really. Like he didn't play well in this series.
That was amazing. I didn't see that. Wow.
Yeah, I think he has some leverage, but like I don't know if he has leverage on the Lakers necessarily. He might have like opt-out leverage and like maybe go somewhere else. But I mean, where is he gonna go is also a question for me. For 18 million. Shout out the Pistons. Like
listen, I was gonna say, like, there are Pistons fans who I really trust, respect, like all of it. Like D'Angelo Russell comes up in conversations all the time. Now it comes up in Malik Monk, D'Angelo Russell, Gary Trent Jr. Like we have all of these different conversations, but I guarantee you there are many Pistons fans who would be very happy with the Pistons outbidding the Lakers to bring D'Angelo Russell to Detroit. And maybe that's what he sees his leverage as one of those teams, that can do that, would do that.
And look, Russell played really well at the end of the year here. Like I do want to say, like his last couple of months, he knocked down shots. He played effectively. It's just like, I don't trust him in big moments. And like, maybe that's a me problem as opposed to a D'Angelo problem. I am wholly willing to admit that. Like it could be that, it's more on me than on him. Like in his last 41 games, D'Angelo Russell averaged 20.8 points, 6.6 assists versus only 2.2 turnovers, shot 45, 43, 88. The big question for me is like, do you trust D'Angelo Russell, who is a career 36.9% 3-point shooter, to make 43% of his threes moving forward? And I don't. So yeah.
To your point, we get into the playoffs. And again, to the Austin Reeves versus D'Angelo Russell, Reeves averaged almost 3 more points per game than him on better from the field. And Austin didn't even shoot great from 3, but Russell was at 32%. He only got to the free throw line in the entire playoffs 2 times in 5. This isn't counting the play-in game. Yeah, those stats just go into the cloud or something weird. I don't know where those stats go. But 2 times in 5 playoff games. So this all speaks to your point. We saw it in 5 games of this series. The only way I would feel real comfortable with the Lakers bringing D'Lo back is to do what I just said, where, hey, we think he can go get 18, 20 points a game, 18 to 22 a game during the regular season. But Sam, we have an answer in the playoffs where we can lower his minutes and his usage in his role, that player X, whoever that player is, I don't have a name, is going to be able to eat up those minutes when we get into a series against the Nuggets where, it just doesn't work as well.
Okay. So kind of looking at this holistically, let's say LeBron comes back for around the same number that he's currently slated to be on.
Okay.
Anthony Davis is locked into this, extension that is essentially 3 more years, at least with the last year of a player option. Austin Reeves is locked in for 2 more years with a player option tacked on. Russell has this $18 million player option. They have Rui Hachimura for 2 years, $35 million. Gabe Vincent for 2 years, $22 million. Jared Vanderbilt's extension kicks in next year, 4 years, $48 million. Jackson Hayes, Christian Wood, Cam Reddish, all those guys have minimum player options. I mean, like if I'm Jackson Hayes, I'm picking up that money. If I'm Cam Reddish and Christian Wood, like maybe I can get a minimum somewhere else, but I'm probably locking in that money if I'm those guys, given the season they had. Taurean Prince is an unrestricted free agent. He played too much this year, but like if he was the 8th man as opposed to like the 5th or 6th man that we saw Darvin Ham use him as this year, I think that would probably be fine. The question now for the Lakers as we're talking is, what do you do if you're them now moving forward? We said at the top here that we think they're a little bit closer than where I think other people believe them to be. Who are some players, who are some types of players that you're trying to target this summer as you go down this road?
Yeah, so I think the number one thing I would look for is a 3-and-D wing, like a guy that can really space the floor and then really take those tough perimeter matchups that LeBron can't take all the time. Rui's too big for, even some that maybe Austin Reeves isn't big enough for, that just don't make as much sense for him. And then, like you said, a guard who can really pressure the paint, ideally would then be able to space the floor, or maybe he gives you another perimeter defender, right? Maybe it's a guard who really defends, also really pressures the paint. And then now Austin has more energy to do what I think he can do offensively. Like if I'm the Lakers, I'm going into next year just assume, like, let's run some more Austin AD pick and roll. Let's run some more Austin LeBron pick and roll, those type of things. But I think that 3-and-D wing, like I just looked through their roster and I'm like, who is that player that you say this guy can knock down 40% of his 3-point shots and he can really guard the heck out of people for us? It's, Vanderbilt only does one of those things. Rui is kind of average at both of those things. They tried to play Cam Reddish for a while and then he ended up out of the rotation. Who is that guy on the roster for them? I think that's number one thing they have to go find.
So I had like a general idea for this that I'll put up on the screen now. I've been like trying to like toy with the idea of the Nets and the Lakers coming together on something.
Okay.
Because the Nets are in this weird amorphous roster situation. And if the Nets are going to go star hunting, they have enough assets to be able to do so, but it doesn't hurt necessarily to add more assets, I guess, to that kind of paradigm. So this is kind of the idea that I came up with. The Lakers get Dorian Finney-Smith and Day'Ron Sharpe from the Nets for Rui Hachimura. To me, Dorian Finney-Smith is an upgrade on Rui because Dorian Finney-Smith can knock down shots and he's a better defender. The Lakers also give up Jalen Hood-Schifino, who did not have a great rookie season. That looks like a pick that could be not great for them.
Sure.
But trying to cash in on it maybe before, things turn pear-shaped could be interesting. And then they have either their 2024 or 2025 first round pick, depending on what the Pelicans decide to do. We'll talk about that in a second as well.
Okay.
As well as a second round pick. So basically Rui, Jalen Hood-Schifino, a first, a second for Dorian Finney-Smith and Day'Ron Sharpe. The idea being Day'Ron Sharpe, physical, can take on some like contact, be able to try and, throw another body at Jokic in lineups with Anthony Davis, have it so Anthony Davis does not have to play a ton of center. Day'Ron Sharpe has, I think emerged as a rotation player in the NBA at this point. He played 15 minutes a game this year for Brooklyn. I've liked the flashes that we've seen, but only has 1 year left on his contract before he potentially gets paid. And then, I think Finney-Smith is just like a real upgrade for the Lakers. If they do this, you're now looking at a lineup of Reeves, whatever they do with the two, with D'Angelo Russell, X, whoever, Finney-Smith, and then, LeBron and AD. And that's an interesting player to me.
Yeah, I like Day'Ron Sharpe. I think he would really fit. Recently, we dropped a mock draft over on the Basketball Bulletin, and Trevor Lane, who covers the Lakers for SB Nation, he took Zach Edey. I thought that was really interesting. And it was just like a big physical post player who we gave the Lakers the 17th pick in this, obviously, in this mock.
Yeah.
The Pelicans were going to defer to 2025. And he's like, just a big physical big to take those matchups. I think Day'Ron Sharpe I like Day'Ron Sharpe. I think he really rebounds. He's physical. Like maybe I think he passes well, like he underrated passer probably than what people would think. Defends. I think that would be a really nice big for them. And then again, if he pops off and plays really well, then, you give him an extended contract. If it doesn't, like you say, it's just a 1-year deal. Dorian Finney-Smith, I can see that. I would say in this scenario, then I would really be searching. And I guess my question would be, because I don't have like the cap sheet exactly, what's the path then to that 2 guard? And I need that 2 guard to really be able to defend and chase guys and be my perimeter stopper.
Yeah, I agree. I think Finney-Smith can take on some bigger wings, certainly,
Agreed.
and can take on smaller wings as well, but probably more toward the bigger wing side, if anything. I like that deal for Brooklyn as well, because if you're Brooklyn, you're still trying to prove to other organizations or other stars around the league potentially that you're contending in some way, shape, or form, or that you're close enough to contention, right? So you only slightly downgrade from Finney-Smith to Rui to pick up additional assets to potentially go out and move for a star, right? So Rui, I think actually fits really well with either of Cam Johnson or Mikal Bridges on the court. So whenever you construct lineups, right, Rui can move back into that 6th man role, which is effective in some way, shape, or form. And then you can bring him in for either one of those two. And I think it moves somewhat effectively for Brooklyn while getting them assets was kind of my idea. Other ideas that I had in terms of trades. Again, this is a team that you're going to have to really search for. You're going to have to really try and find answers for in terms of the backcourt. I wouldn't be stunned if Chris Paul's on this team next year, right? It seems like Chris Paul's contract will probably not be put into place with the Golden State Warriors. Chris Paul obviously has a long-standing relationship with LeBron James. I didn't think Chris Paul played poorly this year. It's just that you have to have Chris Paul in a circumstance where his minutes are, again, a bit more limited, and you can kind of work him through the season, right?
Yep. Yeah. No, that's what I'm just trying to look at the free agents too. And it's so you have Kyle Lowry is there, Markelle Fultz. Who was the other one? DeAnthony Melton, if Philly doesn't bring him back.
I think Melton makes sense for them too, for what it's worth. But again, I want more of a pressure, paint touch kind of guard at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Than anything that's really what I'm looking for here.
Yeah, I would agree. And I don't know that I see that guy as I just scroll through the list.
The other interesting name that I tried to think about a little bit was Colin Sexton. I thought played pretty well for Utah for stretches this year.
Sure.
There are defensive deficiencies that come with Colin Sexton, and you just kind of have to work through that and manage that. Again, his contract does line up well with the Russell contract, with the Rui contract, if Russell decides to opt in. $18 million for basically all 3 of those guys. That's just a name and a number that works, though. You'd have to add, if you're the Lakers, onto that, because Sexton, averaged 19 points a game and 5 assists. And I thought his decision-making tree got a little bit better in terms of limiting terrible shots at times this year, and throughout the course of last year at times as well. I don't want to just say that, he is who he is, but I thought Sexton had a pretty good year. And I think that his style of getting paint touches could be intriguing for the Lakers, at least off the bench. If you have Chris Paul, getting paid the minimum, and you have Colin Sexton in, I think that gives you some optionality at the point guard position next to Austin Reeves as your secondary creator. And then you try and find a 3-and-D 2-way wing like a Dorian Finney-Smith. But to me, these are moves that you can make with multiple first-round picks. They have 3 first-round picks available to trade. I think that you can kind of like Frankenstein this thing together almost using multiple moves as opposed to trying to do one superstar trade that works for, across the board.
No, I agree with that as well. I think it's just whenever we're trying to do those, the names you try to come up with aren't always as easy, right? Like coming up with three names that fit exactly into this, because we don't know who's going to be a free agent, who's not, who might be available via trade, especially in this type of market in terms of, not your top tier players type of thing, but some of these lower tier players. And again, the Russell thing kind of convolutes all of it because you just don't know what he's going to decide or how they feel about him as well. Like, I think that's another aspect of this is we may feel one way about D'Angelo Russell, but how does Darvin Ham and the organization feel about D'Angelo Russell? Does what Darvin Ham think matter in, a week from now? I don't know.
We're going to put a plug in the Darvin Ham thing for a second. Because we're going to talk about that at the end. The other names, the star names that people have brought up, people bring up the Hawks all the time, right? The idea that the Lakers and the Hawks could come together on something for Trae Young, for DeJounte Murray, for something along those lines. The more I think about that, the less I like it, to be honest, because a big thing for the Lakers this year is that they struggled with point of attack perimeter defense. And I don't think DeJounte has returned to that level, and Trae Young is obviously a real issue there. And again, like I say, this is somebody that just advocated for Colin Sexton on some level, right? But Colin Sexton is not their level of star, and it's easier, I think, to manage expectations with somebody like that than it is previous all-stars, all NBA guys like Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, etc. Look, I'd be willing to hear out a trade package, but I don't love it off the top of my head, at least.
I mean, so in that scenario, you're essentially thinking hey, we're upgrading DeJounte is an upgrade over Austin Reeves, or Trae Young's an upgrade over Austin Reeves. But then everything around it's not going to be nearly as good as what we're talking about, right? You're sending out Austin Reeves plus you're sending out all of your ability to do these moves around the margin. And so then it's, is DeJounte, LeBron, and AD good enough with not all minimum guys, but you know what I mean? Guys that maybe don't fill out this roster. I don't know that it's enough of an upgrade where if there's a path to upgrade the rest of the minutia around it, then I guess I would entertain it a little bit more. But I would hesitate to do that unless I could see that for sure. These are the guys that are going to fill the 3 and D, especially if it's Trae. How many guys at the 2 and 3 can you fill in now that can space the floor and really, really defend?
Yeah, no, I agree. I want, again, my goal here is paint touches to try and minimize the burden on LeBron and a two-way 3 and D wing. The Hawks, if you could go get DeAndre Hunter for Rui, look, similar in a lot of respects where they're a little bit disappointing in some regard, and they're not as good of shooters as what you want them to be. Hunter will make shots. He just can't really get them off of volume because the release is a little bit elongated and long, and it takes him a minute to get the shot off in terms of loading into it. Defensively, though, I think Hunter is better than Rui, which gives you a little bit more optionality. If you could do Rui and stuff for DeAndre Hunter, that's kind of interesting. But if you're doing that, if you're the Hawks, I think your goal is to try and get off the DeAndre Hunter money, full scale. And that doesn't really do that in the same way. It does reduce the years that you have guaranteed to that player type, which is interesting, but it doesn't give you a lot of answers necessarily, I don't think, in terms of reducing your tax burden long term or in the short term.
I was trying to
any other names that come to mind to you?
No, I was just trying to think of any teams that had wings that I like. I was trying to think of the Washington Wizards, but I don't think they'd have any reason to get off Denny or Kispert or any of those guys. You know what I mean?
Well, and so Kispert is an interesting one because you could make the case that okay, maybe they just don't want to pay Corey because
Sure.
Corey's coming up for an extension. But
And they have
if I was them,
Bilal, and they have I guess my thought was if they draft another wing, depending on where they land in the draft, right? Like let's just say they land at a spot where they have to take Zachary Risache because he's fallen to them at 5, and that's the pick. So you have Risache, you have, I mean, Kuzma's on that roster, obviously, Kispert, Denny, Bilal. Like you just say, like, hey, let's sell high on one of these guys. Kispert and Denny Avdia are two guys that I'm just really high on as a fan of the NBA. And so as we're talking about these, we always look at contenders and stuff, but I just don't know what the Lakers would have that would make sense for them. Like, why would they send them to the Lakers for something the Lakers would offer? So that I don't think that gets anywhere.
Yeah. The other piece of this that is interesting, twofold beyond the coaching staff, and we'll get to the coaching staff here right after that. First, they have this year or next year's pick. That is a New Orleans Pelicans decision that they will make based on, probably trying to go through a little bit of some pre-planning here over the next couple of weeks and making a decision on what makes sense for them. The Lakers don't have any control over that, though. Doesn't affect the number of picks that they have to trade. They still have 3 picks to trade if they want to move them. It just affects if the pick is this year or not. If you made me bet right now, based on things, I would guess that the Pelicans extend that out to next season, given the strength of this draft. Okay. Max Christie is also a free agent here. I am still generally a Max Christie guy. I would have Max Christie ranked higher in the organizational hierarchy than I would Jalen Hood-Schifino. I would want Max Christie to return. I don't know what a number for Max Christie looks like. Just kind of point blank. We haven't seen him play as much as what I think he probably should. I think he does tick potentially some of the boxes of being an intriguing 3-and-D guy. He just turned 21, though. He's just quite young. This is why drafting extremely young players, as well as giving them 2-year deals like they did with Talen Horton-Tucker and Austin Reeves, but Austin Reeves was older, drives me completely crazy. And it's like a complete and utter like misstep by this front office in terms of like organization. You have to make a decision on Max and pay before you know exactly what he is. Yep. And that's what's really complicated there. If I was like the Spurs, I would absolutely give Max Christie like real money. Like I would be like, hey, we will give you, $6 or $7 million a year for 2 years and do like a 3-year, kind of like what the Paul Reed deal was last year, kind of, and like make it like super weird and kind of poison pilled. I would be intrigued if I was the Spurs, though, just because I want like potential 3-and-D wings next to Victor, and I want to take as many shots on that as I can, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, again, like you're talking to a team like Detroit Pistons, like a guy that can defend and space the floor around Cade Cunningham, perfect. So, yeah, I mean, if I'm the Lakers, that's a really good point in terms of
the Pistons should do that. Like that is an interesting move for them.
They have $60 million in cap space. Like, who cares if $6 million's tied up for a little while? Like, who cares?
Yeah, that's easy. That's really easy. Like if you do something like, yeah, no, that's smart to me. They should do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if I'm the Lakers, I'm with you. I would want to bring him back, but they may have put themselves in a situation where, the young Pistons who aren't going to win anything anytime soon want to overpay Max Christie to maybe hit on something here. Well, we can't afford to match that because we got to have money for over there. And so, like you said, it seems like they've fumbled the bag on so many of these with Caruso and Horton-Tucker. And now, like you said, it's maybe Christie doesn't end up being a dude, but you didn't even give yourself time with him under contract to really find out. And that's the miscalculation. Unless they just know, like maybe they just know, like, hey, he's not good enough. We've seen it for 2 years. We know, but as you said, he's very young. He has this archetype, of what he could be, what we've talked about. I would want to keep him, same as you, if I was the Lakers. But if I'm one of these other teams, I would just outprice them and see what happens.
So the other piece of this that gets a little bit tricky is they're like right now projected like 10 million below the second apron. And as we know, the second apron gets complicated once you start getting into, maneuverability. If somebody gives Max Christie real money, I think that there is a real chance they kind of have to let him walk.
Yeah.
Just to keep like flexibility under the second apron, depending on what the money is at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It gets tricky for them unless they, D'Angelo Russell declines his player option and it's just like all good. If D'Angelo declines his player option, like they can do whatever they want kind of, but if he decides to take it, and I am fascinated by that. Like, I truly don't know what that'll look like. There are just a lot of potential options there, I think.
Yep.
The other piece of it that is tricky as well is LeBron. So LeBron makes $50 million now. If LeBron decides to take, okay, I'm going to do 3 years, 120, well, it reduces the amount of money that is on the books for this year. It gives them some more space to operate below the second apron. I feel like LeBron has never, taken substantially less like that. I can see a world where he takes like a little bit less to lock in more money down the road. I can't see him taking like drastically less.
Well, LeBron's always said that it's his obligation to all the other players to make the most amount he can. And that's something like, I don't always agree with what LeBron says, but I understand this. The one where this is a little bit different is like, he's not the best player in the world. He's not the best player in the NBA right now. He's not a top 5 player in the NBA right now. So it's not a top 5 player in the NBA taking less. It's a top 15 player in the NBA. Yeah. And I'm not saying like, hey, go play for $20 million. It's like, hey, instead of maximizing whatever 50, whatever, maybe it's 45. And that makes a little bit of difference, especially like you say, if the Lakers are like, maybe there's one extra year on there that makes them a little uncomfortable, but you get some cap relief and flexibility in the meantime for the first couple of years of it.
Okay. The final thing here is Darvin Ham. I think they have to get rid of him. I think that he's got to go. I understand that, he took them to the Western Conference Finals last year. I understand that he is, he's been successful by wins and losses and things like that. But like, if you just watch them, there were so many strange rotational decisions this year involving Taurean Prince, involving Cam Reddish. They took Austin Reeves like out of the starting lineup for a minute there.
They also forgot to put him back in the game last night. Austin Reeves had to ask to go back in the game because like they just forgot about him on the bench or something.
Yeah. And then he goes and drops like 4 buckets, has like 2 assists late in the game. Like, it was pretty important. The whole thing was very bizarre. I think you have to move on from Darvin Ham. Like, what coaches do you look at? So like Mike Budenholzer is like a great name, but Mike Budenholzer and Darvin Ham are very close. So like, if he sees like what's happening to Darvin in LA and like doesn't like it, it could get a little bit complicated there. Darvin Ham, obviously from the Mike Budenholzer coaching tree. Other names, I mean, it's hard, man. Like, it's really hard to know, like, around the league. Like I saw people bring up JJ Redick this morning. I'm just like, sure. Like, I love JJ. I think he's, a basketball savant, and I'm intrigued to see how that would go, but
that would be fascinating though, right? Like, those two guys do a podcast together right now. This would be amazing drama if they hired JJ Redick. It would be incredible.
And he's interviewed for the Hornets job, and like, I get it that he wants to coach, and I think the world of JJ Redick's like basketball intellect. It's just coaching's a different beast, and we don't know what he'll be. Like, no. I think he could be great. I think he, could not be great. I just don't know. And to me, if I'm LeBron and I'm the Lakers here in this last little section of LeBron's career, I wouldn't know if I would want to take that risk. It's just that I think that they're, it could work. It could not work, I guess.
I will say this. One thing I learned from this last offseason with the Detroit Pistons coaching search is I know even less about coaches than what I thought I did. And I will readily admit that, coaches is not something I like really hone in on. I watch a lot of games. I have my notes, like all of that stuff. I thought Monty Williams was a home run hire by the Detroit Pistons. Like, he was the big name out there. They paid him a bunch of money. He had this track record, like all of this stuff didn't go well in year one. Point being is like, I don't know enough about some of these guys' demeanor. I don't know about how they carry a locker room. Which guys are good with superstars? Which guys are good with younger players? What's the history of some of these guys? I think those are only answers if you sit in an interview room with them or you've been in a locker room with them. Like, we can say heat culture and all that, but do we really know what that means? Do we know what heat culture is in a locker room? So, like, I have a hard time saying this coach would be the best fit. Like, maybe there's some X's and O's and schematic things people could pinpoint with guys, but we know how hard it is to massage LeBron's ego and him taking over a huddle and screaming at you for not, doing the challenge. Which coach best handles that, Sam? If you can answer me that, then I'll tell you that's the guy they should hire. I don't know if we know who that guy is, or girl.
I agree. I just would not bring back Darvin Ham is where I'm at. Okay. Let's now move to the Suns. The Phoenix Suns are in a pickle, Bryce. And this will also serve as the Phoenix Suns offseason preview for us, but they are in a tough spot. I don't know what direction they should go. They are second aproned to the max because they have Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, all signed long-term to significant deals. They signed Grayson Allen long-term to a significant deal in what I would argue was like a necessity of a move, just point blank. I think they had to do it.
You think he would have got more on the open market? We never got to talk about this.
Yes,
I thought so too.
Gotten more on the open market.
I was surprised how many people said it was a way overpay, and then I'm sure they're taking victory laps because because everybody said he wasn't going to do it in the playoffs, and then he got hurt, and he wasn't great in the games, leading up anyway. I thought he would get $20 million in the open market.
I thought he would have gotten pretty close to $20 million as a starting salary on the on the open market. Like, again, the team I've brought up the whole time is the Magic. If you plop him into the Orlando Magic right now to space the court for Paulo, for Franz, for the guard of their future, Jalen Suggs, Anthony Black, whatever, you could play him with Jalen Suggs and Anthony Black long-term. You can play him with, Paulo, Franz, all sort of different, lineup constructions. If I'm the Magic, like, I would have paid him $20 million pretty easily coming off the season he did. Grayson Allen this year, for people who are unaware and have not been paying attention, Allen shot 49.9, 46.1, 87.8 this year, averaged 13.5 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. He was just a perfect player to have next to Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal this year. He knocks down shots. He is strong defensively. He's not super quick, but and by strong, I mean actually physically strong, for his size. He does get beat by other guards from time to time, but he knows where he's supposed to be. He's not a great defender, but he's fine. This is I think this is actually a good contract for the Suns moving forward.
I thought so as well, depending on the path going here. But just when I saw the contract details come across, he is 29. So maybe it's the years is probably what kept him, and his representation maybe thought that on the open market, some team would want to come in for 2 years or 3 years or something like that, and getting that 4th year with a player option. But yeah, I'm kind of with you. I thought the deal was fine.
Okay. So we've talked a lot throughout the playoffs about how frustrated we were with what the Suns did from a offensive perspective.
Stagnant offense.
It was an incredibly stagnant offense. Whereas we ended last conversation with the Darvin Ham conversation, let's start this conversation with the Frank Vogel conversation. Because obviously, much like with the Lakers, the Athletic wrote a big takeout on what was going on with Darvin Ham. They did a big thing on Frank Vogel 3 minutes after that game ended as well. And after the Suns got swept, Kevin Durant felt like he was standing around in the corner all the time. There was some frustration. It felt like what I will kind of say is this. My impression from having heard from the Suns and watched press conferences and things is that largely the guy who's running the offense was Kevin Young, as opposed to Frank Vogel. And look, Frank Vogel's the head coach. It all comes back to him at some point, right? it absolutely matters. But if Frank Vogel was running the defense, which is Frank's, more well-known side of the court in general, they got a top half of the league defense out of Yusuf Nurkic at center, who I thought had like a pretty good year, especially on the defensive end, given where he was coming from Portland. A 35-year-old Kevin Durant, who I thought had a really good defensive year. Devin Booker, who, again, I think has continued to take strides defensively. Bradley Beal, who's never been a really good defender. Grayson Allen, who we just said, he's okay on defense. He's okay. And then the bench, Drew Eubanks is a way undersized backup big. Eric Gordon,
35-year-old, never known for his defense.
Yeah, it was a real struggle on defense this year, I felt, for Eric Gordon. Royce O'Neal got there. Royce O'Neal can certainly defend, but if we look at it from the perspective of Vogel likely handled a lot of the defense, I don't know that Vogel was seriously bad. If we look at it from the perspective of, Frank Vogel had his hands in the offense and everything, then yeah, I'm for moving on from Frank Vogel. But if we believe, and you and I do, and we can kind of put up some, things here while we're talking. If you believe, like we do, that the offense was more the problem for the Phoenix Suns this year, then I am of the opinion that with Kevin Young having departed to go coach BYU, which we know is something that is happening, he's already accepted the deal, maybe you are okay with running it back with Frank Vogel. Maybe you're not. Kevin Young, again, a guy that had a lot of power bestowed upon him this year because he was the runner-up for this job whenever he got it. And I don't mean this to be shit on Kevin Young hour, right? But he had a long-term deal. He was being paid $2 million a year, he was the highest paid assistant in the NBA this past year. If we believe that, he had his hands in the offense and was the guy that was running the show on offense, and we believe that he's now the BYU coach, there's more of a case to bring back Vogel, I think, than what was previously there, I think, at least.
Didn't Kevin Young make a comment about at his BYU though, that his offense was going to be more 3 and rim pressure and 5 out. And the only reason they didn't do that with the Suns was because they have the personnel. My initial reaction to Kevin Durant saying he was unhappy standing in the corner is you're Kevin freaking Durant. If you're not happy standing in the corner, go tell somebody about it. And I would guess in this age of player empower, they're going to do something about it. So I just, there's a little bit of me really that these guys, Booker, Bill, and Durant couldn't have walked into somebody's office and said, no, we don't want to play ISO ball. We don't want to play mid-range. We want to free flow, play off each other's action, play off each, I just find it hard to believe that if that's what those guys want to do, if that's how they want to play, and I'm not here to tell those guys how they should want to play. They're incredible, but it wouldn't have happened. I just feel hard. I don't believe that Kevin Young held them back by imposing this type of offense on them. I feel like there's a disconnect there.
There had to be some sort of disconnect between the playing group and the coaching staff. That's just kind of what it comes down to. I think that that's a really good and fair and accurate point. There just had to be some sort of real disconnect between the players and coaching staff. And that says to me, maybe they should move on from the entire coaching staff and try and find something else. This is a situation where I wonder if Mike Budenholzer does make more sense, just as a guy that has built a modern offense in every single stop that he has been in. This makes more sense to me for Budenholzer, especially given Matt Ishbia's willingness to just throw money at things, than the Lakers for Budenholzer.
Yeah, I mean, you get a creative offense in here, and I'm excited. The times I enjoyed watching this Suns team is when they played off of each other's gravity, and they would break down the defense or draw a double, and then it's swing, and it's attack a closeout, and then kick, and now Bradley Beal has a wide open shot instead of anybody having to take a contested shot. They're just too good to have to settle for those things all year long. So yeah, I think one of these things has to happen, though. You can't run. I don't think you can run this back with the same personnel and the same coaching staff and expect it to be a whole lot different. Now, like, again, they still had a good season record-wise, all of that, but like they just got swept. And I don't know, maybe the Wolves will go on to win the NBA championship and we'll all talk about this a little bit differently because they're just that good. But like it didn't work. None of these guys are getting any younger. Like we just said that, Gordon is 36. Durant is 36. Beal is 31. Nurkic is 30. Grayson Allen's 29. So there's not a whole lot of internal growth for this team. And being over the second apron the way they are, there's not going to be a whole lot of other ways to improve the roster around them. So if you're going to run it back, I think you almost have to change something with the coaching staff this offseason. If that trade is there, whether it's with picks or young players or whatever, I think I would have to consider it, because after what I just saw, and maybe this is recency bias, I'm not sure how much I believe this big three that I put together is going to get it done. And like, what are you going to get for Bradley Beal anyway? I know we'll talk about that in a second. So I don't know which I would probably running it back with a new coaching staff. I guess, like, I feel like you've almost pigeonholed yourself into having to do that, like giving it another year. But then I would at least find out what's out there for Durant.
Okay. I get that. I understand that. I don't think it's like unreasonable to do. Let's talk about Beal now. So Beal has a no trade clause. That's the biggest thing here. Bradley Beal would have to agree to any location that he's moved to, and like can just flat say to the Suns, I want to stay here.
Yep.
We need to open with that point. And also because of that, it will reduce, in all likelihood, the amount that could be coming the other way. The other thing about Bradley Beal is, yes, me personally, in a vacuum, I would not want Bradley Beal's contract. 3 years, $161 million, no trade clause, unrestricted free agent. After that, has a player option. It's all geared toward him. I completely get it. I do not think that deal is untradeable. Point blank. I do not believe that deal to be untradeable. Bradley Beal is still a very good player. This year, he shot 51, 43, 81, averaged 18 points a game as like a third option. Coming off of years in Washington where he averaged like 25 points per game for the previous 5 years. If you don't believe that there is an organization out there that would be desperate enough to do this, you are absolutely out of your mind. And I will give you 3 right now that, depending on how the offseason could go, I'm not saying they would do this right now, but depending on how the rest of their offseason could theoretically go, there are like potential avenues where this could work. First, Chicago. Like, Chicago could lose DeMar DeRozan in free agency. It's very clear that they don't want to be stuck in the end of, they don't want to be in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes. It seems like they want to be reasonably contending, right? Getting Bradley Beal is basically the same thing as getting DeMar DeRozan 3 years ago. Like, unequivocally, that is absolutely a potential option. If things really broke wrongly for them and they lost options and DeMar left and things, went haywire for them. Number 2, this team is like not a team that I think is stupid enough really to do this, but like they might be in kind of a desperate spot. Sacramento, if Malik Monk like gets paid 23, 25 million by the Detroit Pistons, they don't really have any sort of other option, right? Because they don't have cap space. They'd have to go make a trade for something else, right?
Yep.
Is it insane to think that they would look at Harrison Barnes, another guy on like a relatively negative deal at this point, just shorter term, Kevin Huerter, and like something for Bradley Beal?
Yeah, no, that's what I was just looking at these teams to see. So Harrison, like, that still doesn't get you there though.
No, but like you can add in like the Duarte deal or something like that, and it gets you pretty close. And like Duarte, it seems like is just like kind of not gonna happen.
Yeah.
in the NBA. So like you can add in, or no. You can do, it's Duarte and Vezenkov. So like the Kings could get off of like a bunch of bad money if they think like the Duarte deal is not great, the Vezenkov deal is something they regret, and the Harrison Barnes deal, and get Bradley Beal basically for, Barnes, who his spot like might get usurped by Keegan Murray anyway, is especially in terms of role, it did this year, and Kevin Huerter. Again, I don't know if Bradley Beal want to do that. I'm just saying, like, that's not insane to me to think that a team could do that. It's not something I would do. I'm just saying it's not crazy to think a team could do that.
Yeah, no, that's what. Yeah, I mean, the money is going to be crazy because I was looking at the Bulls roster as well. I don't know that the Bulls can get there if you don't. I guess you'd have to add Lonzo's contract would be part of that. So
yeah,
no, it would be interesting because, like you said, the caveat you give here is the teams that miss out on the things they want or ways to improve or lose somebody like the Kings, I think will be desperate to stay competitive and keep pushing things forward. And if they lose Monk, and then all of a sudden you have to talk yourself into something to keep this thing with positive momentum. Yeah, I mean, we've seen teams talk themselves into crazier things.
Well, like imagine if, the Pistons go crazy and like sign Patrick Williams to some insane restricted free agency deal, and the Bulls are just like, we can't really match that.
Yeah.
And then they have then the Bulls like have real like cap space, I believe, if DeMar leaves and if Pat Williams leaves, because then it's like Levine, the Lonzo deal, the Vooch deal, that gets you to like 80 million. And then it's like Kobe White and Caruso gets you to like 100. And then, I mean, Sumu and Carter and Dalen Terry are like the only guys left. I think they'd have like 25 or so in space. So they could like kind of do a few things. And again, I'm not saying that like Pat Williams is like some great player. I'm just saying that, if the Pistons did something wild, again, the Pistons having like crazy money this summer creates all sorts of crazy outcomes. Yeah. So I'm just saying for people, like they need to like open their minds a little bit on what could be out there potentially. And then the last thing that, could very easily happen is Brooklyn, right?
Yeah.
Brooklyn has the enormous Ben Simmons deal at 40 million to make the money work. And then like, could you do Ben Simmons and Dennis Schroeder for Bradley Beal and something else to make the money work?
Yeah. No, and that's what, like, I guess we've been talking about it from the other team side. I'm wondering for the Suns, like, are any of those deals intriguing in any sort of way other than just getting off Beal? Like, I guess that would be my other thing. Are you trying to get off Beal's money, or are you trying to, like, with the Kings, you bring in Huerter, who spaces the floor, and Harrison Barnes, who gives you another wing forward? Because I think of the deals we've talked about, that's the only one that would make sense to me for the Suns.
Yeah, like, sure. Like, I think that's totally right. Like, are you trying to get better? It, like, if you get Dennis Schroeder, you get like a semi-real point guard. And then you have 2 picks in this crazy Ben Simmons expiring to throw at teams instead of Bradley Beal to throw at teams in a deal. Like, you'd have to think that you could do something different there.
Okay.
Basically.
I got you. I saw it. So you're bringing in the assets to then flip them for what you actually want.
Kind of, yeah. Or like do like a 3-team deal or something like that.
Yeah. Gotcha. Makes sense.
Or maybe you just like find a way to get the assets that you want, right? Like Miami has been connected with Bradley Beal over the years. Like, could you do like Terry Rozier and like Duncan Robinson gets you pretty close money wise? And then like add something else if they just really want like another creator, right? And again, I want to be 100% clear. I'm not saying that I would do any of this if I was the other team.
Yeah.
In these moves. I'm just saying that like teams get desperate in the summer, especially a team like Brooklyn, who it's clear has been selling out to Star Hunt and who is nowhere if they don't get Donovan Mitchell or if they don't get, DeJounte Murray or whoever, right? Even if they get DeJounte Murray, they should still be looking for another guy, right? Like if you could end the summer, if you're Brooklyn, with like DeJounte Murray, Bradley Beal, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Nick Claxton somehow, that's a win. I don't know how you do that necessarily, but like if you can find a way into that, that's a win for you.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, we get into this, and does Donovan stay or go? Does DeJounte stay or go? What does Paul George do? Like, we have all of these question marks, and there's other teams in play here, right? Like, it may not be that those guys don't become available, but the Knicks have all of these assets to go get these players that are, really good players. The Sixers have all of the assets they need to go do this stuff, including cap space. The Oklahoma City Thunder, if they so choose, can get involved in all of this stuff. The Rockets.
And let's talk about the second apron now for the Suns, because I think that that's another factor that we have to talk about. So what are the limitation for the Suns in terms of second apron status? They do not have access to a mid-level exception. They're unable to aggregate multiple salaries in trades, which means like the deal, actually, I'm thinking about this. The deal I came up with like Schroeder and Beal, or Schroeder and Simmons for Beal.
Yeah.
And something, you actually can't do that.
Could not do
and
that.
They can't take more money back in trades than what they
has to be 100% or less.
They're sending out. So it gets very complicated very quickly for them as you try and think through everything that's like a possibility. It does very much limit it's not as limiting, I think, as what people have in their minds, but it is limiting in terms of the flexibility that you have for something like this. The deals that I would very much kind of look to move if I was them are Yusuf Nurkic, because Nurkic just couldn't play in the playoffs. It felt like to me. Like we've seen this for a while now, and it just feels like if you can move him for something, you have to move him. I don't know who would want him. I thought he had like an okay year this year. It's just that you can't play him in the playoffs, and that gets tricky. I would try and move Nasir Little. I mean, that deal is just like underwater in a real way. He's barely playable a lot of the time. David Roddy is like unplayable. It feels like if you can move him for something, that's a real thing. The other factor that they have is Royce O'Neal. And if you're blowing past the second apron, you might as well blow past it and give him real money. It seems like they're going to be locked in on signing Royce O'Neal to a solid deal. I mean, Royce's representation, good for them, man, because they have all the leverage. You want to talk about leverage, D'Angelo Russell?
That's leverage.
Royce O'Neal has leverage because
yes,
they are a second apron team. If they lose him, they have no option to replace him. So Royce O'Neal, you're getting money. Shout out Royce.
Yeah. Name your price, Royce O'Neal, because the Suns can't afford to lose you, because they cannot replace you. They at all. They cannot go out outside of a minimum deal. So you had the 5 starters. Let's leave Nurkic there for now. Gordon was still fine. He's
playable.
Yeah, 11 points a game, almost 38% from 3, 80% from, you didn't get to the free throw line. He doesn't give you much else other than that at this point in his career. Like, that's 6 or 7 dudes. That's it. That's all you got. You got it. What, I mean, really, how do you add to the roster? You got to hit on the draft pick to get, and one, like, hopefully a couple of vet mins that come in and make sense. The problem is none of those worked out for them this year. So I'm curious what guys want to sign up for that in Phoenix after watching all of these guys sign up for it last offseason and none of it playing out for, what was it, Watanabe and Bol and all of these different guys. Like, none of them ended up that big of a deal.
Well, so here's the other tricky thing with this, right? So Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Grayson Allen, Yusuf Nurkic, that's 5. Nasir Little, David Roddy, that's 7. Royce O'Neal, that's 8. Eric Gordon, Josh Okogie, Damian Lee, Drew Eubanks, all of those guys have player options. That gets you to 12, like, immediately. So you actually don't even, and then like whatever you do with Bol, who, by the way, like, I have been the biggest like Bol, like, I don't really think he's an NBA player guy. I would do another flyer on Bol if I was them, like, kind of point blank. I am kind of intrigued by that because I think Bol showed some things at times this year. I'm not saying like it's a home run. He's definitely a minimum guy and it's absolutely a flyer, but like might be a flyer worth taking. Then you have number 22 in the draft this year, whatever you decide to do with that, right? Move it, not move it, whatever. You're already to 13 contracts. So really only have like room for 2 minimum flyers if you want to do it. You could cut David Roddy, you could cut Damian Lee, but like that's more money adding to your bill at the end of the day, which like, I don't know if you want to do that. Right. So it's, they're in a tough spot. To me, coaching is a big thing. I would like to see them with a different coaching staff offensively to see what it looks like. I actually completely understand that perspective from them. The final thing that I will bring up is if this is an organization that generally has decided to not like scout, they've been very public under James Jones about like not scouting for the NBA draft. I can't really see a world where they make a pick at 22.
Yeah.
Like I'm not saying that it's, a certainty or anything. I haven't heard anything about that yet to this point beyond like James Jones's public comments previously about not giving a shit about the draft. It's just hard for me to envision them going down that road right now.
The only thing worse for an NBA organization to do other than not actually care about scouting for the NBA draft is then making a pick when you don't care about scouting for the NBA draft. So, what, like if this is the path you want to take, whatever. I don't agree. I think it's crazy. I would have a scouting department just so I could get intel on these guys for second contracts and trades and stuff like that, but to each their own. But if I'm not going to take this seriously, I sure as heck am like the value is better to trade it than take a shot in the dark that you have. At least it's somewhat educated for other teams.
Do you know what? So they do have a scouting department. I want to be clear.
Yeah.
That.
So
like,
I was exaggerating. My bad.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Like there are actually like a couple of smart people that work there.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. A great example of that is somebody there is responsible for taking Tamani Kamara last year.
Sure. No, good point. Fair point.
And like hitting on Tamani Kamara at 54, 56, wherever the hell they took him, was pretty impressive.
Yeah. No,
right.
Fair point.
So I'm not saying that they don't have people there who can't scout. It's just that James Jones has been very clear that like he seems to not care about the draft. So that's kind of the reality here. I would imagine that pick gets moved. I would imagine the 2031 gets moved just because they have 2 picks that they can move in a deal. And like, if you can attach picks to Bradley Beal to get off that move and create more get off that deal, create more flexibility, that's a good idea. If you can attach picks to Yusuf Nurkic and find a different, interesting center option, that's intriguing. Part of their issue in that market is that a lot of good centers get paid over $20 million a year, and you can't aggregate salaries together in trades now. So it's hard. They're in a tough spot. They're in a very, very difficult spot moving forward now.
Yep. It'll be a very interesting offseason.
Okay. Final team we're going to talk about is the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans are in a bit less of a pickle, I would say, than either of the 2 teams we talked about previously, if only because they have a lot of assets on their books right now. They don't necessarily have the star power of the Lakers and Suns, but they do have like a lot of really good players, and they have a lot of assets that they can trade, including an incoming Lakers pick either this year or next year, on top of all of their own picks, that give them real flexibility to be able to make moves. This will be an offseason preview for the New Orleans Pelicans as well. And I'm excited to kind of talk about what makes sense for them moving forward and how they go about building their roster. I thought David Griffin, gave really interesting comments today, kind of talking about how they've been patient in the past and how they've decided to kind of potentially move into a different direction.
Our takeaway has always been, let's see this group healthy. I think we've seen it enough. I think we had some really, really good opportunity to see Zion play a career high in games. I think we saw it for segments of time well enough to understand that we've got a lot of work to do. And again, because it is a historically good Western Conference, there's teams that didn't make the playoffs that are going to get radically better this offseason. We need to do the same. And I think you'll see a real sense of urgency from all of us to do that.
The fact that they're talking about sense of urgency is interesting because Griff kind of does this every offseason, and that's a real thing. But B, they have to make moves this summer now. Like, they are now in a circumstance where they won 49 games this year, and Griff is absolutely right. They looked really good at times winning 49 games this year. But they're coming up on some decisions that they have to make this summer, particularly, that are complicated. So their core under contract that I would consider like unmovable guys. Zion Williamson, I'm not moving him at this point. I think he looked great for stretches this year. He's the guy I'm building around. Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, unless I'm getting a superstar coming back, I am not moving either of those guys. And then you have the CJ McCollum deal, who I think is movable like entirely, but 2 years, $64 million. I think he would look great as like a third or fourth option, as opposed to the number 2 option he was asked to be in the playoffs. They have Jonas Valanciunas and Najee Marshall, both of whom are free agents that are valuable. Both of those guys are going to get like real money on the free agency market, and like should get real money on the free agency market. Dyson Daniels, Jordan Hawkins, EJ Liddell is there. Larry Nance has a 1-year deal left. Like, they have a lot of guys kind of at the end of the roster as well. But like, the big decision here is Brandon Ingram. He's the number 1 guy here that they really need to make a choice on. And I don't know what that choice should be. Or I don't actually, I know what the choice should be. I don't know what it will be.
Yeah. So I will say, I think at this point, you have to hitch your wagon to Zion Williamson. Hope that the games you got from him in the regular season is something you continue to get. Hope that, obviously what happened in the playoffs doesn't happen again, but I just don't think it matters. Like, you are playing in this world with Zion Williamson as the cornerstone. And to me, that makes the BI conversation a little bit easier in terms of, I really like Brandon Ingram. I don't think I love the fit with him and Zion. You have wings and Herb Jones and Trey Murphy coming, and you have some other depth there. I don't know what Brandon Ingram's trade market and value would be. I would assume you could find somebody to give you some legit assets. I think based on the fit, I would move BI on top of the fact that I wouldn't want to have to lock him into the bigger contract he's about to get. Is he extension eligible this summer? Is that right?
He's extension eligible, and he has 1 year left on his deal.
Yeah. So I think I like BI. I like him as a player. I think he's better than what happened in this Thunder series, but I think I would at least see what I could find.
I think he is not a fit in New Orleans. And the reason that he's not a fit in New Orleans is honestly why, like, I would have some concerns about him fitting in a number of other places, right? Like, we talked about this yesterday with the Pistons for a minute, right? Like, Brandon Ingram has been brought up with the Pistons here and there. And I think that is a terrible fit with Cade Cunningham, because Brandon Ingram likes to catch and hold the ball and stop and survey and like take 2 dribble pull-ups in the mid-range. I think him and Cade just kind of like operate in the same areas. And I'm like not sure Brandon Ingram is better than Cade Cunningham right now, point blank. And that's me thinking Cade is really good and like having some questions now about Brandon Ingram. But like, I think Brandon is a good player that needs to like speed up his processing and like speed up his decision-making on the court, and just be more aggressive and be more physical and like be willing to not kind of be the perimeter only guy that we've seen for stretches of games throughout his career. He's a really talented, excellent player.
Absolutely.
It just is hard to find the exact fit that works based on his style of play, and based on the fact that there are 30 players plus in the league that are better than him. So he's never going to be like the number 1 guy. He's going to be the number 2 probably.
Yeah. And he's about to ask for, I would assume, a huge number for his next contract.
Yeah. No, I think Ingram is the guy that they have to move this summer. Like, if you were making me pick like one former All-Star that will be likely traded this summer, Right now, I think Brandon Ingram would be the one that I would look at is like most likely just given the dynamics of the situation. That comes from no reporting inside the Pelicans organization. That's just purely looking at what the Pelicans need and what like what we've seen from them and finding a fit for the Pelicans in, as David Griffin put it, a historically difficult Western Conference, finding a way to upgrade and given the contract status of Ingram, I think that this is the summer where you basically have to move him.
Okay, so that's where I wanted to go too, because here's the thing, and I realize it kind of sounds like we're just, going all in on Brandon Ingram, and I want to emphasize we think he's a very, very talented player. But the thing is, if you don't have the pathway to a very good number 2, then I would keep Brandon Ingram, even if I don't love the fit, because is there anybody else on this roster that is a number 2 to Zion? We just, like you just said, CJ is a solid number 3, high-end number 4. I agree with that. I don't think he's a number 2 option, especially if you want to win in the playoffs. Is Herb Jones ready to step into that? I don't think so. Is Murphy ready to step into that? I don't think so. Not a number 2. So what is the path then to getting me that second option, second best player on the team behind Zion? Because if I don't have that in place, then I am better off keeping Brandon Ingram.
Yeah, that's where like you really have to scour the trade market for potential options. And that is where the fact that they have all of these assets moving forward, I think is really important to note, right? So like they have this incoming Lakers pick at some point, right? Whatever that is. They have number 21 this year. They have, I believe, like the Bucks pick in 2027. They have all of their own picks through 2027, 2028, 2029, 2020, or 2030, 2031. Like they have, I believe, a pick swap with Milwaukee, not next year, the year after, maybe. So you have potential options at your disposal to do things, to go get that next star for Zion, right? To me, for Ingram, I'm more just looking for like guys that I think really fit next to Zion. If I'm moving, or like, look, if I can do Ingram and picks to go get a star, like, great, let's do it. This sounds amazing. I'm for it. Having said that, if I can't, I'm more looking for like good players that make sense to me.
Do you think you can build out this team? Like, do you think Zion's good enough? And then like these 3-and-D wings and what CJ can do, like, do you think you can build out the roster that way? Just like, I don't know who the true number 2 option, second best player is, but we'll just put enough of these guys. I guess a little bit like what the Knicks have done with Jalen Brunson, right? Like Brunson, I realize completely different players. I understand that it's not a great comp, but like who's the second best player scorer on the Knicks during this postseason run?
I mean, it's probably been like Josh Hart, to be honest with you.
So exactly my point, right? Like you have this one really good player, and then you just put all the perfect pieces around them, especially if they can space the floor and defend. Maybe it works, right? Like the Knicks are being pretty successful with it right now. Is that the path the Pelicans can take? Is just let's continue to double and triple and quadruple down on floor spacers and defenders around Zion Williamson.
Yeah, maybe like that's not a bad idea to me. Like I'm for that as an option. I think that makes sense. The issue is I'm like really trying to find, because if I'm the Pelicans, what I want in a Brandon Ingram deal is I want a center that really fits next to Zion Williamson.
Yes.
Because Jonas Valanciunas is a free agent this year. I like the answer to that is like I want a center that spaces the court, and I want a center that like can really step out and shoot and be able to like help Zion with that and be able to run like inverted 4-5 with like pick and pops and things like that. I don't know who that is on the market right now. Like I don't know if there's a name, because like if I'm the Pacers, I'm not moving Miles Turner, right?
And we like Isaiah Hartenstein, but that's not him. We love Isaiah Hartenstein. That's not him.
So like one option that feels like kind of crazy to me is if you're the Bucks and you lose in the first round, do you have to like completely blow this thing up a little bit, like
Okay.
around Giannis and Dame, and like try to move Middleton and try to move Brook? I don't think they'll do that. I think that they'll just like base it on, who, hey, we got super injured, we got super unlucky.
Yeah.
Let's run this back with Giannis and Dame one more year and kind of see what this looks like, kind of thing.
I agree. Lopez would be interesting. Like that we've talked about, again, we talked about it yesterday on the pod is, yeah, we all love these floor spacing bigs, especially ones. I think with the defensive infrastructure they would have, well, I don't know. CJ is a negative defender too. You still need a rim protector. Those guys just don't grow on trees. There's just not enough of them.
Yeah, no, there's not. And like, I think the Spurs are going to be like super patient with the guys that they have, like with what they're doing to build around Wemby. So like, I don't know that makes sense for them. I don't know that I like the idea of like Memphis going all in on Brandon Ingram. I guess it's not impossible, like, but that feels, I don't know who they would even do to like match the salaries even. You'd have to do like Brandon Clark and like Marcus. I guess you have the Kennard deal. Actually, you could have like Kennard pick up that team option and do like Brandon Clark and Kennard, and that gets the money close. And then you could just like add assets. And then like you could do like Aldama in that deal, maybe, if you like the idea of like a spacer next to this. The other option is something that Basketball Genesis just brought up. The guy you're talking about is Alex Sarr.
Yeah, but I mean, how are they getting there?
Yeah, it's a great question. Like, what if you're the Pistons?
No.
Look, again, it's not a deal I would do if I was the Pistons. I would rather just do that Alex Sarr thing. But like, I don't think the Spurs would do Brandon Ingram for one of these picks. But like, let's say that like Brandon Ingram's available for number 2. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like that feels bad to me. Like I wouldn't do that. I would still just rather have the pick, I think, this year. But I can see other front offices just being like, no, I would rather have.
Would the Blazers want Brandon Ingram?
It's an interesting one.
I'm literally just looking at the lottery order. You know what I mean? And it's like,
but again, though, like you would need to get up to like 1 or 2 probably to get Alex Sarr.
Where's the odds?
What odds are you looking for?
Well, Portland has 13 points. I mean, they finished 4th worst. I mean, they have essentially.
No, they would have a chance. It's just like you would need to know what it looks like. You know, like we need to know what the lottery is.
Yeah. Right? That was just, I was just looking like, I don't think it makes sense in Detroit. We've talked about it. There's some things that make, anyway, Charlotte doesn't make sense to me. Washington's not trading off of Sarr. Portland is a team that to me would make sense trading off of Sarr, and a team who maybe wants to build this thing out quicker, not completely go like they're going to take a wing, I would assume, with their pick. So if they got high enough to draft Sarr, you don't draft him because you have Ayton and you have whatever you're going to do with time, Rob Williams, and we've talked about Duop Reith. And so we don't need to draft Sarr. And instead of drafting some young wing, we'll bring in Brandon Ingram to play with Scoot and the backcourt that, we talked about that situation. I don't know, but that's the one team that's in the lottery that would make the most sense outside of maybe San Antonio.
And they actually have the money to do it because they could do like Matisse Thybulle and Malcolm Brogdon or something like that. Like, yeah, I guess like Malcolm Brogdon, Matisse Thybulle, Alex Sarr. I still wouldn't do that if I was Portland. Still wouldn't do that. I mean, like Jeremy Grant exists there too. Like that's a complicated one because they both are like kind of ball stoppers a little bit. I probably wouldn't do it if I'm Detroit, or I probably wouldn't do it if I'm Portland. I mean, like Memphis is like kind of an interesting one to me because he's just like really not a Memphis guy, I feel like, but Memphis does have the money. Like they can do the Kennard and Brandon Clark deals and throw in John Concher and do that lottery pick for Brandon Ingram. And it's a wildly expensive roster at that point, but they do need to consolidate a little bit in terms of just like guys they have on their roster. I don't know, like that if they would move up and like you'd be certain of things, that's not. Memphis is interesting. Memphis is more interesting the more I think about it. I wouldn't do it, but I guess it's like not impossible.
I was just looking for any teams in the league that have this floor spacing big that where it would make sense.
Yeah, no, it's hard to find. It really is. Like this is the, and this isn't to say Brandon Ingram's a bad player. He's a really good player. The other team that like I can really see doing this is again like Chicago or Brooklyn, like teams that just like need star power, right? You need to go find stars somewhere. And Brandon Ingram like can be a guy that at least like kind of moves the needle for you, especially like fan base wise. Brandon Ingram has like a great fan base. And again, like I want to be clear here, like Brandon Ingram, not a bad basketball player, like actually quite good at basketball.
Yeah.
Averaged 20.8 points, 5.1 rebounds, 5.7 assists this year, shot 49, 35, 80. Here's the other thing with Brandon Ingram though, that I think a lot of people don't realize. Brandon Ingram has never played more than 64 games in a season since his rookie year. So like his rookie year, he played 79. After that, it was 59, 52, 62, 61, 55, 45, 64. He misses like 20 games a year.
Yep.
That's a real problem. Like that's a real significant issue. And that's something that will hold back his trade value a little bit, in addition to him being on a 1-year deal.
Yep.
Part of the thing is like, I don't know if Brandon Ingram will get to like the, level of trade value that people hope and want.
Because of all these different factors.
Yeah.
No, I think that's probably right.
It might be their best move to do something like Ingram and picks to try and get in like to a bigger star deal from one of these teams that's contending. That like Kevin Durant would be like the ideal for them, right? Like if they could go get Kevin Durant, like let's do it. But I mean, like, could you do Brandon Ingram plus stuff for Kevin Durant? Like a lot of stuff, not just a small amount of stuff, like Ingram, Jordan Hawkins, Dyson Daniels, and like picks.
Yeah.
Like picks, like all of them, right?
Yeah.
Not impossible, I guess, but I don't see it, right?
I think I like that better than, I think I like the idea of pairing BI with assets to go get a star that makes more sense than I do trading BI on his own for just some of these random pieces, the more we've talked through it. But star hunting isn't easy. And so again, there's going to be plenty of other teams on the market for those stars when they come available as well.
Yeah. Like picks, does like, I'm literally just trying to like think of potential moves, Ingram, Daniels, Hawkins in a first or 2 firsts or something for Durant. I mean, it gives the Suns depth. It, reduces their cap hit by like, God, I think it'd be pretty damn close to like 5 or 6 million. Yeah, that's I don't know, man. I'm not saying it's a good idea for either team. I actually don't know if that helps either team, to be honest with you. But Suns need depth, whatever. I don't know. It's hard. It's really hard to come up with deals for all of these teams that we're talking about, but especially for Brandon Ingram. I think he will get moved, though. I think you have to move Ingram.
Yep. Yeah, I think I'm there as well.
Okay, other things we have to talk about with the Pelicans. Jonas Valanciunas. I don't know what happens with him this summer.
Well,
truthfully.
But the thing is, like, what Nance is back on, he has 1 more year. So, but like, he's not your starting 5. And so, yeah, I mean, that puts you in a tough spot if you're the Pelicans.
You have no replacement option.
Exactly.
Honestly, like, I'm kind of wondering if we talked about with the Lakers that I think it's more likely that the Pelicans extend that pick out to next year because it's just like a better, better draft, everything like that. I'm wondering if they take it this year to try to find a big. Because if you're looking for one thing in this draft, it is a big. Like if you can be at number 17, there's a decent chance you can get like Kyle Filipowski, who really works next to Zion as like a dribble pass shoot big.
Well, and so that's what I said, like in this range would be Filipowski, who makes sense, right? The stretch thing. Misi, probably not as much sense, especially kind of the rawness. You have, I would
Tyler
have
Smith, very raw, like Deron Holmes, interesting.
I would have Deron Holmes in this range. I'm a little higher than some, but I think Deron Holmes is really, really good. And I will say Deron stretched the floor this year at Dayton. And so if you're looking for that, he can do that or show that he could do that. Edey doesn't stretch the floor at all, but if you need just somebody to come play 20 minutes, like I don't think that makes a lot of, but there's names in this range.
Well, the other name would be, you know, a guy that you and I have not loved throughout the process, but Khalil Ware is like another name that like could be in this range very plausibly.
And I think I stomach some of those guys, Sam, if I have 2 picks there, you know what I mean? Like if I can take one of those guys and then, especially some of them like Ware, and then have another pick where I can go get a wing or, you know, one of these, I don't know. I like their guard situation with Alvarado, but maybe they don't feel like they need to though. Maybe the rest of the roster is rounded out well enough.
Yeah. Like the more we talk this through, the more I wonder if they should take this pick this year. It's 17 and, you know, the Lakers are probably going to be better next year if LeBron comes back. So if they take that pick this year, you potentially try and like get a long-term answer at the big position where this draft like has a few options that could potentially shoot next to Zion. The more I think about this, the more I think that they really should like probably do this, I guess. But yeah, like we'll see what happens there. They have 21 as well though. So like, it's not like they need to have 17 to do this. Like they can just do this at 21.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say is you still, I don't think all of those guys are off the board at 21. I don't know that I don't think either of us think Filipowski lasts to 21, but I think we're both higher than most on him. I would say most of the other guys we've talked about probably are still there at 21. So
yeah, you could find an answer that like makes some sense with them for sure. Najee Marshall, unrestricted free agent. If I'm him, I think I'm going elsewhere just because I think he can play.
I think
yeah, like I love that he's tough. I love that he's physical.
He defends.
Like there's that one quote from Willie Green talking about who was it? Talking about Herb Jones like being their Swiss Army knife. And then if someone asked like if Herb Jones is the Swiss Army knife, like what's Najee Marshall? And Willie Green just said the knife. And I was like, that's an amazing quote first and foremost. And it's so like true about his game. He's just like tough and defends and like,
and he made shots this year. He made shots. He's young. I think the Pelicans should do everything they can to keep him. I think it works with everything they're doing. If I'm Najee, I would think that I could go get paid, make more money. And again, I know we can I would love Najee Marshall in Detroit. I would absolutely love him in Detroit.
Have a bigger role though for me. Like Najee's 26. Like if I'm his representation, I am trying to like go out there and get, 3 years, 30 million or something with a player option on the end of it. So I can hit the market again at 28 after playing, hopefully some real time.
Yep.
And then going, you know what I mean?
No, I agree 100%. Again, if I'm the Pelicans, I love the idea of keeping him because I have all of these guys I can play. If I'm Najee and his representation, I am going to get paid and I'm going to get a bigger role than the 19 minutes a night I played for the Pelicans. This is a guy I think should be playing 25 to 30 minutes a night, potentially starting a lot of those games. I think he's very, very good at basketball.
I think he's really a useful basketball player.
Yep.
I don't know if he's a starter, but like he's definitely a guy that plays 25 minutes a night to me. And, look, this year he played 19, right? I'm not saying that he's, that they've like underused him like substantially or anything. They just have a lot of guys like
they have really good players. Yeah. Herb Jones and Trey Murphy are awesome.
Yeah. I think he's more like, 3 327, something like that. Like that's the range for me, like $9-ish million a year. Jose Alvarado is an interesting one. Similarly to Herb Jones last year, they have options on the table that they can do. They can do an extension this summer by declining his team option and getting him paid a little bit more early. They can pick up the team option and extend him off of it. They can just pick up the team option and like take this into unrestricted free agency next summer. I don't think I would do that. I would probably just try to like get Jose Alvarado like under a contract now and see what I can do there. He's extension eligible. There are just a lot of different ways that you can kind of do it that way.
Yeah. I mean, I've said it. He's one of my favorite players in the league. The energy changes when he steps on the floor. He plays so hard. And if you ever just really focus on Jose Alvarado, like just watch a Pelicans game and just watch him, he does all of the little things that I love that players do. At his size, he's rotating the box out the big on the weak side. He's setting weak side flares. He's directing people where to go offensively. He's cutting to open up that side of like all of the flow of the offense stuff, all of the defensive stuff. I love his game, and I think he's an impactful player, a meaningful player that they should absolutely pay and keep around.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a big fan of Jose Alvarado as like a great backup point guard in the NBA. Those guys, $7 million a year, something like that, 7-8 million, a bit, maybe 9 even, like wouldn't be crazy to me, but you could maybe reduce that number by like declining the option this year and then like kind of stretching it out over 4 years as opposed to like extending 3 years on top of the team option. So, maybe you could do something like decline the team option in like 425, 430, maybe 430 we would say, instead of doing like team option and then 328 or 330 or whatever. Yeah.
Yep. Nope.
So
I like it.
To shake up those Ingram, I would say that's the big thing you have to do. They have to find an answer at center, be it keeping Jonas. Jonas is like an ass kicker, man. I love that dude. It's just like with Zion, it's not a great fit. It could be that like if they can't find a great answer, it could be like a 1-year deal for Jonas.
I was gonna bring that up. Like, do you just sign him to a 1 year? I think somebody in the mock draft I did, I think somebody took Messi for them, and my thoughts of that was then you have to bring Jonas back. Like you have to. Messi is not a guy that's going to be ready to play that load right away. So then you bring back Jonas on a 1-year deal.
Yeah, but this team looks different next year, I think is my take. Like the guys that you have for sure are Zion, Herb, and Trey. And then, probably Dyson Daniels and Jordan Hawkins. And I would guess that CJ is more likely to be there than Ingram for sure. But I think, this team probably does not have Brandon Ingram next year. Just reading the tea leaves, not saying that I know these things. I'm saying reading the tea leaves. I would say probably not Najee Marshall. And then Jonas is tough. Like, you just don't know what that could look like at the end of the day.
For sure.
But like Jonas is a real ass kicker and like was a real piece of why they were successful this year. Like losing him you can't lose him for nothing.
Yeah.
Like you can't have like no option with him, right? Because he averaged 12 points and 9 rebounds this year. He played every single game this year.
It's amazing
for them. Like you just really need an option there. You need something that you can go to beyond Jonas Valanciunas.
Yep.
That's all we've got here on the Pelicans. Last thing, NBA, just like please get your shit together with the early entry list. Like that's just what I want to close on. Just get your shit together with the early entry list. I don't know how that got released without names being featured on it. But like I've been talking to, representation for some of these kids for a while now. Like Hunter Salas, like, the plan has been to declare for weeks on end now. And we've lost Bryce Simon, but the goal for a lot of these kids has been to declare for weeks on end now. And I would just hope that we get to a place where all of these kids are able to get invited to the combine and everything. So that's all I've got. Go follow Bryce over at Motor City Hoops. Looks like he is departed. No, we've got Bryce back. I was just telling people to go follow you at Motor City Hoops.
Google Chrome just like literally said, hey, we're over it, whatever. Everything just logged out, like the whole browser exited out, and I was able to get right back in, and here I am. So I'm sorry.
I love it. Bryce, just tell the people where they can find your work.
Yeah, at Motor City Hoops on Twitter, some NBA draft, all of that different stuff on Twitter, over on Substack as well. A couple different Substacks that I contribute to, one being my own, and then the Pistons Pulse, where we just had my guy Sam Vecenie. I guess which way do I point? This way. Over here, a really good episode that Pistons fans are eating up. We had a blast with Sam, me and my guy Omari Sankofa II. The first 7 or 8 minutes was awesome. We didn't talk any basketball. We just joked and laughed and had fun. So that was good. And then, of course, Game Theory Podcast here with the Sam Vecenie.
Go to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. We'll have stuff, I would say, moving forward. And I'm just draft guiding this week. So trying to kind of get that locked into place for you guys. But that's all I've got. Until next time, we'll be back on Thursday, I would guess.
Works.
Thursday it is. All right. Thumbs up. You got the fireworks in the background.
Did excited. You do that?
I didn't. I don't know what happened there.
How did that happen?
Thumbs up, baby. I love it. All right. Until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.